You've most likely seen Elden Ring consumable only runs, and I really wanted to do a similar run, but pots are kinda OP, so I decided to use the worst possible consumables in Elden Ring, this being stones. Now, in case you didn't know, throwing rocks at your enemies isn't a good way to kill them. Also, to make this challenge even harder, I can't use any shields, ashes of war, spells, and incantations in order to buff myself. So the only way of increasing my damage will be by leveling up and via talismans. I also can't use any summons, as to my knowledge there aren't any that use stones as their primary weapon. And on top of all that, I haven't played Elden Ring in a really long time, so my skills simply dissolved into nothingness. Let's go. After naming my character something stupid and skipping the Grafton sign, I began the usual task of getting all the stuff I need. I teleported to Caelia Crystal Tunnel where I got some gravity stones, which will be very helpful in this playthrough. From here I made my way to this merchant near the swamp, as this is the only way to consistently get poisonous stones. And here's the reason why the stones are the worst consumable in Elden Ring. Because you can't simply craft them, you have to buy them or loot them from a corpse, but obviously I can't do the last one. Thankfully, near the impassable Great Bridge, a bunch of soldiers will be fighting dogs, which will be the main way we will be farming runes. Also, one thing you should remember is that stones don't get returned to your inventory after getting used. That's why they're called consumables. So every single time I fail in this challenge, instead of immediately trying again, I will have to farm runes for several minutes just to try again. Keep this in mind, as the number of failed attempts on bosses will increase and the number of stones I will have will also increase. After buying all my stones, I decided to immediately go and fight Margit without any flask upgrades, but soon enough I realized that I had to and go collect all the stuff I need. I also decided to farm some runes along the way to level up my vigor. Margit was a good demonstration of the main problems and strategies I will be using throughout this entire run. For now I had access to only poisonous stones, which don't deal much damage, but if landed in quick succession will inflict the target with Ligma. The problem is that many very agile bosses will give me little room to attack, making applying poison more difficult. Thankfully, Margit has very small resistances, so I could quickly get a poison proc and then just dodge. And here's the second problem. Poison is a pretty good way to deal damage, but it takes a very long time. And while the boss is being poisoned, I just have to stay alive somehow. But it's quite hard to do because I haven't played Elden Ring in a long time and thus forgot how to dodge the majority of moves. And even if you're a pro no-hit runner with 2000 hours in Elden, after some time you'll just simply get tired and start to make mistakes. Obviously the fight with Margit is very short and takes only around 10 minutes, but the further we go, the more time I'll have to spend on dodging bosses. One very good example of this will be the 4th Margit attempt, as the boss was nearly dead, and because I nearly won, I didn't focus on the fight and failed to dodge the easiest attack. Also, why does this arena have no walls? Like, just why? Was it that hard to just put a fence there or something? Anyway, after enough time, I've managed to master most of Margit's attacks. Of course, I would occasionally get hit while trying to throw a rock at him, as the animation is very slow and I can't move while doing it. This one feature will be responsible for most of my deaths during this challenge. After enough dodging, Margit goes down and I can finally get access to Godrick. Also, while farming runes in Caelid, I got the rune buff, which for some reason appeared really often in this spot. Like, I have a new game plus 8 save file with 200 hours and I got the rune buff only once, and here I get it like 3 times in 30 hours. Actually, 30 hours is quite a lot, but still. Like every normal Elden Ring player, I decided to go through the main gate and receive a ballista shot right in the face. But after a couple of deaths, I finally got to fight Godrick. Because Godrick is the next boss after Margit, he obviously has more health, and thus it wasn't really a surprise that I didn't have enough resources to defeat him. We'll talk later about why this boss is so easy in this challenge. In the meantime, I decided to collect all pieces of the dectus medallion, and I obviously didn't face any troubles while doing this. Wait, he can climb ladders? With the two parts of the dectus medallion in my hand, I could safely get to the Grand Lift of Dectus and get to the Mount Gelmir, where I could find volcanic stones. Now, if you're asking me why am I getting a crafting material, that's a very good question, but I didn't know that at the time. Wait, what? No, why is it in the materials tab? No! Yeah, it turns out I've confused the volcanic stones with the explosive stone. But in my defense, I've pretty much never crafted anything in Elden Ring. Oh, and did I mention how many hours I have in this game? Yeah, it's quite a lot. After a very extensive 10-second search on the wiki, I realized that the only way to acquire an explosive stone is via a bell bearing. Thankfully, this bell bearing will be simply lying in a chest in the sealed tunnel. So for now, I don't have to defeat any side bosses to progress. After offering it to the Twin Maiden Husks, another stone was added to my shopping list after every single failed attempt. Also, can some lore experts explain to me why are we trading with a corpse? Like, they're not even similar to the finger readers that, actually do something. Explosive stones on their own deal decent damage, but overall they lose to the poisonous stones because poison is just OP. Also, because they are explosive, they do fire damage, which means that they are very effective against Clean Rot Knights, erdtree avatars, hands, and yeah, that's pretty much it. All other bosses have resistances. Now I finally have the firepower to defeat Godrick. And I think it's time to discuss why he is the easiest boss in the entire challenge. First of all, Godrick, despite looking like a centipede with all his actual limbs, is actually very slow. And in addition to this, all his range attacks are very slow and easy to dodge, which gives me plenty enough time to attack. Normally, the main issue you have with this boss will be his wind attack, as he does it randomly and it's really hard to dodge in time. But because I'm always standing away, I can't get hit by it at all. But it's still quite annoying because Godrick's mini tornado reflects all types of projectiles, which include my stones. The second phase was obviously a bit harder, but still quite easy, because I could simply run away as I don't need to be close to the boss in order to deal damage. And just like that, I have defeated Godrick. I should also mention that at this point my character was level 34 and the majority of the points were dumped into Vigor. The next boss was Rennala, and she had 1000 more health, and thus I needed to obtain yet another way of dealing damage. Because after obliterating Godrick, I had only 3 explosive stones left, so my current loadout simply isn't gonna cut it. I decided to get some glinstone scrap because, as we all know, Rennala is in fact weak to magic damage. But if seriously, I couldn't get an infinite amount of gravity stones because I had to defeat the caelid bell-bearing hunter for that. He has the same amount of HP as Radahn and is apparently harder than Radahn too. In order to acquire the glinstone scrap, I had to get yet another bell-bearing. But this time I had to defeat a crystallian from the raya lucaria crystal tunnel in order to get it. And to be honest, getting to the boss was harder than actually defeating her. Oh no, no! I mean, it was all planned from the very beginning. The strategy to defeating the crystallian was very simple. Get a poison proc, and then just simply run around in circles until she dies. Because it turns out a boss needs to have more than 2 attacks to actually be interesting. Now I have access to the glinstone scrap, which upon use is destroyed into 3 magic projectiles that home onto your enemy. In terms of utility and accuracy, this stone was way more superior than the other ones. But unfortunately it was dealing less damage as it scales only from intelligence, and for now I haven't touched the intelligence stat at all. I also decided to test my newfound items on Radahn, but I could only get to around a quarter of his HP. I obviously needed a way to increase my damage, and the first thing that came to mind is leveling up, as stones scale with your strength, dexterity and intelligence. But I wasn't sure that the difference will be all that noticeable, so I decided to load my new Game Plus 8 save file and test these rocks there.
That's a lot of damage!
I was dealing nearly triple my current damage. Except this was done on a level 479 character with 80 points in strength, 64 in dexterity, and 18 intelligence, so I still had a long way to go. Obviously I wasn't ready to AFK farm runes for hours, so I decided to pay a visit to various bosses that will instantly give me lots of runes. But the problem was that because of how weak I was, I couldn't defeat powerful bosses that normally give the biggest amount of runes. And because of that, I was actually losing runes. Because when I was fast traveling to Round Table Hold in order to restock on my supplies, after finishing my shopping spree, I realized that I spent more runes on buying stones than I was receiving for killing a boss. If you wanted to find an efficient way to lose as many runes as possible, here you go. But I wasn't giving up, as I decided to defeat the evergaol Crucible Knight and the erdtree avatar in Liurnia, but it didn't go so well. Because I was really tired of farming runes, I decided to finally go to the Raya Lucaria Academy. Normally here was supposed to be the footage of me stealing the key, but I kinda lost it, so here's just 5 seconds of black screen instead. While walking through the academy, I realized that I had to defeat the Red Wolf of Radagon in order to go any further, and this was the worst boss for this challenge. The insane speed and agility of this boss paired with the amount of attacks he can spam made it nearly impossible to hit him without trading damage. Actually, the only attack that had a good punish window was this magic sword attack. Another problem that started appearing the further I progressed into the game is that bosses can dodge my attacks. And I didn't think this would be an issue at all because during normal playthroughs I was only using melee or spells that track enemies. But it turned out to be a severe issue, as not only was I wasting one of my consumables and not dealing any damage, but I was also putting myself into a vulnerable position, which made the fight with this dog and future bosses all the more difficult. Because for every next attempt I had to buy more stones, I decided to look for better farming methods. Obviously I couldn't access Moblin Palace, but I was still hoping to find something that was at least a little bit more efficient. And something more efficient I have found. You see, if you go near the minor erdtree in Liurnia, there will be a cliff, and if you time your jump correctly, you can get past the death barrier and fall below the textures until the floor despawns and the enemies fall to their deaths. And that's also how I managed to get revenge on that previous erdtree avatar I couldn't defeat. After doing a little bit of farming, I decided to try my luck again with the dog, and this time I managed to continue to Rennala. This fight is already annoying in a regular run, because you have to obliterate 3 children in order to actually deal damage to the boss. This simple annoyance turned into a real problem because the more stones I use on the children, the higher are my odds of just running out of consumables mid-fight. I tried my best to complete this phase in 2 cycles, but unfortunately I didn't have enough damage for that. As for the first phase itself, it was actually quite simple, as all I had to do was apply poison and then just hide in a corner where nobody could do anything to me. And the second phase was going pretty well, until I got another attack combo and I died. Being the absolute giga chad I am, I decided to go and search for other crystals because my lack of damage was obviously the issue here. But the real reason was that I wanted to defeat Radahn first because
I have plans that I cannot share with you right now because the haters will sabotage me.
After analyzing every single article on the Elden Ring wiki, I found out about the glinstone. This crystal acts exactly like glinstone scrap, except you throw it instead of immediately crushing it in your hands, and the throw also deals damage. 1 damage. 1 damage. Wow, just wow, that's amazing, dude. But what interested me the most about this item is that you have to craft it. And because at this point I was just sick of farming runes to buy stones, I figured out that collecting resources for crafting will be a nice change of pace. In order to craft this crystal, I needed 1 cracked crystal and 1 crystal bud. I found out that the best way to farm cracked crystals is in the previously mentioned raya lucaria crystal tunnel, and crystal buds were farmed in this location near the Ravager's shack. I also tried fighting a low-level knight's cavalry and failed, but I managed to get revenge by cheesing the one in caelid. At this point I also thought to myself that it will be good to collect all the talismans I need. First of all, I really wanted to get the golden scarab talisman, as it will very greatly boost my rune farming capabilities. But Miyazaki and his team did a very great job of making the worst possible dungeon. Even getting to the entrance of the cave was hard, let alone the gigantic pools of Melania's vaginal fluids you have to go through just to try and beat the boss. And even if you somehow manage to avoid the rotten squirt, it will still build up even when you're on land. Like, how is that even possible? And if that wasn't enough, the boss itself isn't easy, as he can spam attacks non-stop and even cast a heal, decreasing my already limited damage supply even further. I decided to ignore the golden scarab for now and get Radagon's score seal, and it was very easy. There it is, all stats plus 5. Ah, oh my god, Ratatouille! The next talisman that was also easy to get and was very helpful was the ritual sword talisman. But this time I had to defeat the demi-human queen in order to get it. And this boss fight felt completely different. Because normally you just go in and kill her in like 5 seconds, but because my damage was so low, I actually got to experience every single one of her attacks. Seriously, did you know that she throws her scepter at you when she goes into her second phase? This is amazing, why does no other enemy do that? After this surprisingly great boss fight, I finally got my hands on the ritual sword talisman. I also thought about getting the Kindred of Rot talisman, as I frequently applied poison, but this cave was nearly as annoying as the previous one, and the boss was even worse, because these giant centipedes have the most OP ability in the entire game, simply called Nut. Oh yeah, and they like dodge all the time, and there's 2 of them, so no thanks. I was also considering getting some talismans that boost my magic damage, but in order to get access to them I had to complete Ranni's questline. But for that I have to defeat Loretta, which was very hard as she is immune to poison. And getting Marika's score seal was also impossible because I had to defeat Radahn for that. I tried defeating Rennala several times, but it felt like I needed more damage. And then I remembered about the bell-bearing hunter I've mentioned earlier, and how he gives gravitational stones. Obviously, because of his gigantic amount of HP, I couldn't defeat him, but I could let gravity do all the work for me. And after many attempts, I managed to make him fall down the cliff and get the bell bearing. Now I was ready to defeat Rennala. Also, I have discovered an interesting glitch during this fight. You see, if the poison proc manages to get her to 0 HP while she's in her protected bubble, she will not move to her second phase. This wouldn't be an issue because at this point I had a lot of different crystals and stones, but when I destroyed 3 auras around the children, it didn't work. The shield was still present. Only after 9 hits, I managed to get rid of the shield and finally move on to the second phase. It was still quite difficult, but I realized I could simply run around the boss to avoid most of the projectiles. And this time even the summons couldn't do anything to me. And just like that, after 32 hours of gameplay, we managed to beat Rennala. And this was huge, because acquiring 2 runes opened a gateway of possibilities. Now I could not only get an extra slot for my talismans, but I could also get access to the capital. Well, almost. The first thing I did was defeat the second Margit because he gives a talisman. I also decided to buy some preserving boluses and finally get the golden scarab. Also, did you know that the clean rot knights have a negative fire resistance? Yeah, all of a sudden this fight got really easy. And I also got the Kindred of Rot exaltation by using the same strategy of spamming rocks everywhere. All these victories made me very confident that I could defeat Radahn. Yeah, not yet apparently. I knew I had to defeat the Draconic tree Sentinel in order to progress, but instead of learning his moveset, I decided to ignore this problem and do some other stuff instead, just like I do in real life. First of all, I've acquired the Scorpion Talisman as it pairs very well with my explosive stones. Then I've defeated the Onyx Lord in the Evergaol and in the Sealed Tunnel. I also defeated the Crystalline Duel in the Altus Tunnel and the Sanguine Noble in the Witherblood Ruins, which similarly to the Demi Queen turned out to be a very fun boss. And I also defeated the second version of Godrick for a talisman I'll never use. I also tried defeating several other bosses, but I always failed. But another boss that I managed to defeat was Loretta, and this meant I could finally get access to Ranni, except she wasn't here because I had to defeat Radahn for that. And thus I started thinking, how could I possibly defeat Radahn? The main problem was that when I tried to make a shot, I stopped moving, which gives Radahn plenty enough time to kill me. And then I thought about using different types of summons in order to draw his aggro away from me. Obviously I couldn't use summons to deal damage. But then I remember about Therolina, who is widely regarded as the worst summon for this boss, as all she does is heals you. But this was actually very good, because if she didn't attack the boss, this meant that I wasn't breaking the rules of the challenge. But after some testing, I realized that she uses holy pots, which aren't stones. Also, at this point I've moved back to my previous farming methods, as I discovered that you can lure this bird to the soldiers and it will give you a lot of runes. Also, I got a crow with golden eyes, which just shows for how long was I doing this garbage. I tried cheesing the Draconic tree Sentinel, but the problem was that he couldn't fall off the cliff himself. I had to push him, but my stones had no knockback whatsoever, so this didn't really work. But one thing I've discovered is that the various rocks in the area were protecting me from the tree Sentinel's fireball, which was really important. This attack was the worst because he really liked to spam it, and the window to dodge it after a successful hit was so small it would have been better to just not do anything. But here, this downside was completely removed, as now I could just simply spam attacks without taking a huge risk. But I still had to dodge his lightning attacks, so this fight was still very challenging and I nearly died at the very end. Will this hit? I'm not sure. Wait. No, I didn't see it! Okay. Oh, please, just die, please. Oh, yes. Oh my god. Oh, thank Jesus. Oh, we did it. Now I could finally get access to the capital and proceed further. I tried doing the lane skip glitch, but after many attempts, I figured out that it would be better to just simply walk. And I also defeated the erdtree avatar along the way. And now it was time for Golden Godfrey. This fight, alongside the Elden Beast, were my biggest worries, because these two bosses are completely immune to poison, which was still my main source of damage. But thankfully Godfrey has a pretty small amount of HP, and he was also my favorite boss, so it wasn't really a surprise I managed to beat him on my first attempt. Just ignore the amount of health I have left, okay? Also, did you know that the axe this Godfrey has is completely intact compared to the real one? This was supposed to be one of my facts in my 150 Elden Ring secrets video, but I figured out that everybody already knew about the change of eye color and the whispers during black flame attacks, so yeah, I never released it. Now I had a total of 4 talisman slots, and I was level 81. Yeah, now you understand how much time I have really spent farming runes. Now it was time for Morgott, but I knew I wasn't ready for this, so I decided to go and visit the Murkwater cave in order to get Margit shackles. But this is the only cave in the entire game that is guarded by an invader. And it would have been fine because I have many gravity stones, but the problem was that Yura would spawn regardless of what I was doing. Because he wasn't using any stones, this meant that I either had to kill the invader before Yura gets to him, or let Yura do all the work himself. And spoiler alert, he didn't manage it. This meant that I had to not only defeat an NPC that can dodge my attacks, but also do it very quickly before Yura manages to get a hit on him. And this was surprisingly easy. Not only because even if the enemy dodged, the gravity stone fan will still hit them, but also because Yura got distracted by a random skeleton near him, which gave me plenty enough time to defeat the invader. Patches was also very easy to defeat, as when he is casting his mist attack, he is very vulnerable. And you know what else is also very easy to defeat? The subscribe button. No, but if seriously, just look at the statistics, this should be illegal. Now I have all the resources I need to defeat Morgott. All I have to do is simply not die, which was very hard. Morgott was a very agile boss, which made it that the only punishable attack was this jump attack, just like the jump attack of the red Dog of Radagon and the godskin noble. And okay, you get it, bosses in this game really like jump attacks. Because of that, most of the time I will be just trading damage with the boss, which obviously wasn't ideal. So I decided to increase my protection by getting the Lionel set, but after equipping it, I realized that I wasn't heavy load. So I got the +1 arsenal charm, but I was still in heavy load. I needed to get the Jarsenal Talisman, and I had enough resources to defeat only one single invader. By throwing rocks in his face, of course. But it turns out that you can simply cheese them by getting on this branch. But even after equipping this talisman, I still was in heavy load, like what is going on? So I had to do a little bit more farming, and now I was finally in medium load. And I also got Radahn's talisman, because why not? I also tried defeating Morgott in the worst location known to the history of video games, but he had way too much health and he was completely invulnerable to poison for some reason. Then I decided to try my luck with Radahn, and it was actually very great. I knew exactly when to attack and how to dodge him while being on torrent. My strategy was to bait out one of his slower attacks and then simply punish it. The various magic crystals were also very helpful, as they allowed me to deal some good damage while being at a safe distance. The only attack that I would consistently get hit by will be this gravity pull, but this was actually good because after this Radahn would do his slam that is very easy to punish. I also tried cheesing the second phase multiple times, but I was just too far away from the coast. But the second stage of the fight was actually fine, except this gravitational waterfall dance that would give me heart attacks every single time. But otherwise, it was pretty much the same. And I also finished him off with his own magic for extra style points. Radahn fell after 51 hours of gameplay, and I was level 96 at the time. Defeating Radahn opened a gateway of possibilities. I'm pretty sure I have already said this like 15 minutes ago. Anyway, now I had access to Nokron, where I found Marika's Scar Seal. Oh yeah, and also there was the Mimic tier boss, but come on, do I really have to explain why this fight was so easy? Although the talisman wasn't the only reason I wanted to go to Nokron, as now I could finally progress Ranni's quest. But most importantly, get the Mimic tier ashes.
What? No, alright. I know that sounds bad.
But don't worry, because I just simply couldn't use them. Because Ranni was not here to give me the spirit calling bell, and I also couldn't buy it from the Twin Maiden husks. Well, at least you know I didn't cheat. Then I did some running around a upside down tower before eventually coming to the Godskin noble boss. I was actually looking towards this fight as it would be a good taste of what to expect from the duel. And all I ended up doing is applying poison, running away for the boss to return to his starting position, and repeat this process until he dies. Man, I sure hope it will be this easy during the real Godskin duel. Then I got the Stargazer Talisman and got to Noxtella, where I got kidnapped by a ball. Bro, I can't get out. Bro, can you move? Bro, can you move? Oh my god, bro, what? I can't move. I can't do anything. Bro, can you move? Bro, can you move? And got another talisman that is completely useless in my situation. Although it's not like it has a use in regular Elden Ring. I also completely changed my loadout, as now I was wearing Radahn's armor, as it's objectively better than Lionel's set, and the silver tier mask, as it boosts my arcane, which means faster poison procs, and a little bit more holy damage protection. Speaking of which, Morgott, and like 90% of all bosses for that matter, really like holy damage. So I revisited the subterranean shit grounds to get the holy protection talisman. Yes, I have no idea what it's called and I really don't care. Now I was finally ready for Morgott. Because of my numerous attempts, I have already developed a plan. First of all, apply poison and get some extra punishes. Then use Margit Shackle and spam Gravity Stone chunks for big damage. Repeat this again, but with a poisonous proc instead. Now during the second phase transition, I had to spam as many gravity chunks as possible to do maximal damage. For that I had to be on a safe enough distance for the explosion to not hit me, and also get a little bit lucky for the environmental threats to not damage me. And now was the hardest part, because I had to not only survive this phase, but also find windows to deal damage. Just like during the Radahn boss fight, I was highly relying on crystals because of their homing ability and increased range. I had to be very careful when choosing when to attack, as a couple of hits could immediately send me back farming runes. Dodge, dodge. Okay, it's all good. It's fine. It's no. Okay, that's a good punish window. No. Okay, that's good. That's really good. That's some big damage. Spear, alright. I knew he would do something, okay? Where's the follow-up? He normally do a follow... Yeah, okay, whatever. Oh, no. Oh, that was so close. Oh, my God. Okay. Come on. One more. One more. Come on. With the thing. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, we did it. Morgott is dead. Oh, my heart is racing right now. Oh, this is insane. Oh my God. Whew. And just like that, after 54 hours, I managed to complete half of the game. And on this note, we will finish this episode. This video is already getting quite long, and I'm kind of struggling fighting Gideon. So thank you everyone for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.